Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on conveyancing retention. My name's Nicola, and I'm your Client Relationship Manager, and I'm joined by Lois and Scott, who are your Marketing Account Managers at QS. It's a real pleasure to have you all here today, whether you're currently using the conveyancing alerts or someone who's just looking to find out some more about them. So conveyancing retention, whether you're using your existing client base, cross-selling opportunities, repeat business, it's in our productivity pillar of the QS way. We partner with TwentyConvey as one of our suppliers, and Richard Hinton's here today to show you the solution that they offer. And he'll be covering information about the service, key trends and strategies to help. You can ask any questions during the webinar in the comments tab by just typing them as we go. And now over to you, Richard.
Great, thank you very much, Nicola, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and have the chance just to walk you through our conveyancing alerts proposition, both for those who are already using it and for those who are imagining they might have a go with it. So. My background, just to establish my credentials, I've been in and around conveyancing for more than 30 years now, I'm afraid. I was 12 years at Shoesmiths, and then I had stints with LexisNexis Visual Files and also with Searchflow before setting up Pittsford Consulting, which today is morphed into TwentyConvey in front of you here today. So all of that journey has been involved with residential conveyancing, and during all of those years, I've been very conscious of the very real issues that you as conveyancers are faced with from a client retention point of view. So what I was planning to do today was look at three different areas. So start off, I was going to talk about client retention and the problem that you as conveyancers have. So I'm telling you what you already know, but explaining what the problem is that we're trying to solve with the alerts. Then I was going to take you through the alert so you can understand what it is, what sits underneath the bonnet, as it were, and then how it works in practical terms. And then just throw out finally some hints and tips about how you as a firm can make best use of the alerts when either as you come on board with us or even if you're an existing client, you may want to reflect on your existing processes and so on, so forth. Okay, as we said with Nicola, I mean, any questions, please shout as we go through. Delighted to take any from you. It's all very relaxed and informal. Let me start then with the problem about client retention. As I say, this is something which I expect you're acutely aware of. We all know as property professionals that our best clients are our former clients because the cost of acquisition is so much lower. And because we have they're less price sensitive in terms of the fees we might charge, and generally it means that we're in control of the pipeline of work coming into our business. We're not beholden to others for new instructions. So that's the good news, but the bad news is when you start to look at it from a conveyancer's point of view, because the metrics don't help conveyancers. The data we collect now demonstrates that the average home owning life cycle has stretched out to 19 years, which is a phenomenal length of time. I mean, it is an average, so there are plenty of lies either side of that. But the uncomfortable reality is that we give our conveyancing clients plenty of time to forget about us between acting for them. So that 19-year gap is massive, and trying to broach that or straddle it is incredibly difficult for even the best organized of businesses with a focus on it. The other problem that compounds the length of time that people take between moving house is the competition for their conveyancing business at that moment. After 19 years, when they finally decide to put the house in the market, then the world and his wife descend on them in a buying frenzy in order to try and sign them up for their conveyancing operation or their preferred one, which may well be linked to referral fees and some such. So it's once they do come back on the market, it's a very competitive fight for them. And you won't be surprised to know that it's a difficult fight to fight. So we did an analysis of 30,000 live sale transactions that were in the market at the end of last year, and we looked to see where cases were having the conveyancer acting in the sale was the same conveyancer who'd previously acted in the last purchase of that property. And sadly, the numbers there for you, only 11% of cases was that correct. So the balance, 89%, were using a conveyancer for their sale that they hadn't used when they bought the property in the first place. So it demonstrates to me that there's a real demand in the market for a product that helps you as conveyancers address these really quite dramatic imperfections in the market from your side. So hence why we turn to conveyancing alerts. In a nutshell, that's the problem we're trying to solve for you, and we do it, I hope, in quite a straightforward fashion. So one of our cornerstones of our business is that we collect data from the land registry. We take it from the price paid data set, so the sort of the copper bottom data set that establishes who owns which property. And the clever thing that we do is that we append to every residential purchase transaction the name and the address of the conveyancing firm who lodged the AP1. So what that means is that we know, going back to when we started this in 2013, we know which law firm bought which property, which helps us in lots of different ways with different products. But in the context of the alerts, it means that when we put that together with another data set, and this is provided by our partners, 20CI, we're able to look at every residential property that comes on the market every day. So 20CI have more than 99% coverage of the market. So we see every single instruction that comes on the market, and we're able to just essentially bash those two data sets together. So every day we look at every property coming on the market to check to see if we know who the law firm was who last bought that property. And where we do, and where there's a match, we're able to supply that to a law firm as an alert. More than 40,000 of these went out last year to your professional colleagues up and down the country. You can think of it as a new business lead. I much prefer to think of it in the context of client retention, because what we are saying to you is now would be a really good moment to get back in touch with your former client, because they have demonstrably a new need for your services because their property is back on the market. So this is the product we've been running for 5 or 6 years. As I say, we've got a strong track record in delivering on this. We think we use the 35% is an approximation of what we think, what our clients tell us they achieve. I should say, in terms of converting these alerts into new clients, I should say that masks a broad range of performances. We have firms who do more than twice that, who are up in the sort of 70% mark, which is very gratifying. And it's largely that's then down to how the law firm performs in terms of managing the alerts. And the final piece that I'll talk to you about we'll touch on that, I suppose. So as I say, we supply that alert to you just as a line on an Excel spreadsheet. The other thing we do, as well as telling you about this alert, something else we now do is we reinforce that with a mailing. So we're not only beholden on you to contact your former client, we're also at the same time sending out a piece of marketing collateral, as an A5 card in this case, to the address, using your artwork and your sales messaging, so that we have a definitive coverage. We know that every single one of your alerts is going to be receiving this collateral from you as a reinforcement of any contact you might have made previously. So we introduced it because it was we wanted a double touch on the client side, and also to help firms who weren't confident of always being on the ball and getting in touch with their client as soon as they possibly could. So it was like a safety net, if you like. But the combination of the two, a law firm acting proactively and this mailing going out, has had great results for our clients. And as I say, it bridges that gap between across those 19 years since they last heard from you. What does this mean for a firm? Well, I mean, there is no typical firm, but were we to take an example where we had 500 alerts, and there are most firms in the top 200 or 300 in the UK is likely to have that sort of volume. It depends obviously on how long they've been in operation. We think that generates about 750 new file opportunities. And the reason for that multiplication is because we think that every other sale transaction is likely to have a related purchase. So we make that computation. But based on those figures, if we use what I hope is our sort of fairly modest conversion rate of 35%, that's more than 250 new files into a business. And if you're charging an average of about 1750, which markets tell us you are, then that's nearly £500,000 in revenue that we can potentially see in fees coming into your business. So the commercial case is pretty well proven, frankly, and it works well for the clients who use it. So much so that they're prepared to endorse us. So we took the Estes shilling last year, and we invited our clients to come and support us, and they did in droves, I'm pleased to say. So we won an award with them as well last year, but pretty much all of our clients stay with us for an extended period of time and are satisfied with the results that they're getting. They're obviously driving new business into their operations, and they're controlling the flow of work, which I think is important. We've had some firms who've joined us having been largely dependent on referred work, and they felt that was an unhealthy balance in their business, and they wanted a counterbalance by opening up the direct channel. So that's where the alerts have worked well. It also obviously works very well with firms who pride themselves on driving their business with direct work, because obviously that's what this does, and it drives up those conversion rates. So there's a broad appeal across all different types of firms in terms of what we've been able to deliver. So that's what it is. I think if I'll turn now and talk a little bit about how this works in practice. I say a little because it doesn't take very long, because it's a relatively simple process that we take you through. There are no integrations. There's nothing from an IT department to worry about or anything like that. It's all very straightforward. So our clients, and I'm using Shoesmiths here as my former employees as an example. When we have an alert, when that bashing of the two data sets together has generated an output, we'll send you an email to whoever you want us to send it to. It could be to multiple people, and we're telling you that we've got some alerts for you. So in this case, there are 5 that we had for Shoesmiths on this date, and then a firm does is simply click on that downloads button. And it opens a page on our platform, which you get taken to, where we effectively make available to you all of the alerts. And you can see and historically there are alerts there as well for going back over time. So it is you can always access it as well, just if you wanted to understand exactly what you had been receiving from us. But it's where you pick up the alerts from us. And simply clicking again on that purple download button opens an Excel spreadsheet for you, and in that we're supplying you then with the details of the transactions that we've matched for you with the alerts. Interesting to note, if you will, we're supplying you with the deed date, so the date on which the transaction last took place. So you can see in this example with Shoesmiths, we've got cases going back to 2016, 2017, 2018, and we indicate how much that your client paid, and obviously the address of the property, and we then tell you the data which came back on the market, which is typically would be within 1 or 2 days of the property being listed for sale again. We tell you who it's on with and how much for. So immediately looking at this from Shoesmith's point of view, there are 2 properties there that are £1 million plus that it will probably receive some sort of special treatment from them. The terms of the process here, you'll note we're not supplying you with any contact information or client information, which is a great relief to us from a GDPR point of view. What we are doing is giving you plenty of information which allows you to retrieve your purchase file. So the one step in this process that requires your input is you have to retrieve your purchase file in order to identify your client, your clients, and their contact details, which is fine. The firm then makes contact with their former clients, explaining that they've they're back on the market, still got your purchase file, would be delighted to act, etc., etc. And at that point, it's over to the law firm to manage the sales process, notwithstanding the mailer that will also be going out at the same time as the alert is posted on the platform. So what I was going to do now is talk a little bit about how our clients and firms generally look at best practice in terms of how firms manage this process, because it's not. These are still birds in the bush rather than in the hand, and there is a conversion process that requires your attention. We find the most successful clients using these alerts are the ones who have a dedicated new business team, who are A, have the time, and B, have the empathetic sales training that means that they're strong at converting clients into the business. But it does work equally well with firms who have individual fee earners who are making contact with on files that they previously acted up for as well. So again, it works across a broad church, but best practice would see you having some dedicated capacity or resource to managing these leads. So in terms of managing them, well, a few key principles for you. Firstly, and again, you'll understand this, these alerts are perishable. So they have a shelf life. We are supplying this to you, as I say, within 1 or 2 days of the listing, which means that they have waved that public flag to say they're on the market. So the feeding frenzy will be about to begin. But we do find typically that there is a window of opportunity for our firms because agents and others involved in the sales process will typically wait until there is a prospect of a buyer in view before making a conveyancing sale. It's not always the case, but generally that seems to be the experience we have. So there's a week to 10 days in a normal market when we think that you have first dibs at converting this client. So we always stress to our clients that they should be hopefully acting on these alerts on a daily basis. We're supplying them on a daily basis, so it works well if you are able to respond similarly on a daily basis, because it means that you're striking definitely whilst the iron is hot. We also try, in terms of the tone of the communication, we find and we encourage firms to use, I've called it here, understated professionalism. So we ask people to be sort of conscious of the state of mind of your former clients. Sadly, they're not always on the market for good reasons. There will be sort of probate sales in here. There will be matrimonial issues that have prompted the sale. So we encourage our clients to tread cautiously when they're first making contact, but to also try and make sure that they're emphasizing at every stage the comfort that you as a professional can provide to them in terms of your former relationship with them, and that you have control of the matter on their behalf. So there's as I say, I characterize that as understated professionalism that just sort of pulls them through towards a presumptive close. Another point I'd make, and it's bullet point 3 here, is that it's unusual for an alert client to immediately press the instruct button the moment you're in touch with them at the start of their journey, because it is just that, it is a journey, and it's unlikely to get that sort of impulse buy. So we do encourage our clients, our law firm clients, to treat this as a process. So there's a number of different ways in which we can communicate with them, but it's going to take a number of interactions. Typically, it may even up to the point at which they've got a buyer interested before they will commit. There are some useful strategies to help them, to try and bring them on faster than that. To talk about upfront information and being oven ready for when your seller, I beg your pardon, when your buyer arrives. But notwithstanding that, we want you to be to understand that it will take a period of time before you actually get the instruction through. It is, though, a head start in terms of the relationship. So when you have a new client, you're feeling your way with them. You're trying to understand, their motivations and their particular the ways in which they want to interact with you, and so on and so forth. You've got a head start in that regard, because this is a former client of yours who you've already engaged with, who has, we hope and expect, a level of trust in you as a business. And is familiar with your organization. So we encourage you to play on that and to pull that through as one of the key features that you'll drive home. We elaborate on this a lot more. I'm just summarizing for you broadly some of the areas which we hope we think are important to firms using the alerts. I'll turn to the messaging then. Given everything I've just said about the process and the tone of voice that you might best use, in terms of actual messaging itself, we find some of our stronger clients are at pains to emphasize that the reason they're in touch with their former clients is that this is part of a wider client engagement program, which of course it is, because you're retaining our services to help you understand when your services are most likely to be required again. So lots of our clients start with messages like, we always keep an eye on our former clients' properties, and when we see them back on the market, we get in touch to see if we can help. And that resonates very strongly with clients who are looking for reassurance from their legal advisors. But then you can add to that some really quite sort of punchy benefits to being back involved. So you have your purchase file, so you know the property. You can reference it if necessary, but you have that head start. And it may well be, and I mentioned earlier, that it may be that your fee earner who last acted is still with you as a business. So we have clients who will tailor the communication so that it comes from that fee earner. So you're building not just on the corporate or the business relationship, but the personal relationship that you've invested in previously. So that's really powerful. And then you get to some sort of practical points. So most of our clients will emphasize that getting started early means that you can save up to 3 weeks in a transaction, because you've got so much of your as I say, your sale ready or oven ready, because you've completed a lot of the documentation, etc. And again, typically all of our clients will offer a loyalty discount off their fees, which again is a powerful motivator for all of us, but certainly your former clients included. So they see that's an important part of that. All of those very concrete reasons why that success rate is north of 35% when you're talking to your former clients. The actual process itself, different firms behave differently, but if you're looking for common threads, I think most firms will start with an email, and it'll be, and typically that email will be along the message lines that we've just outlined. But then that email will normally prompt a call. It'll say, well, it'll finish by saying, I'll give you a call the next day or two to see if we can help. So you're announcing or introducing a call rather than it being a cold call. But then there's an outbound call that goes through. And as I've said before, we have this mailing supplement which will then arrive in a day or two later. And then you will have a follow-up process in place to sort of continue calling, continue emailing, because as I say, it's a journey and you can't expect a result instantly. But it will give you the opportunity to give a quote and to close the instruction. So we have a lot more detail on all of these points in terms of how best practice. But I just wanted to have the opportunity just to run you through those general principles, if you like. But just to pull it all together, I mean, if the client retention is a really, really big problem in conveyancing, and I understand that, we understand that. We think that conveyancing alerts is a massive step along the path to addressing a lot of the structural problems you face, because we're able to nudge you at just the right time that you should be back in touch. And it could be the trigger for you to sort of start to build a much stronger direct pipeline of business into your operation. And we genuinely feel that there's a win-win for everyone in this space. So thank you for your time just now. Obviously, I'm open to very questions as you were able to pose them. But thank you for your attention, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Thanks, Richard. There was so much information there that it's going to be so useful, I think, for our firms. And I know that your solution is becoming more popular across the network. So that's why we invited firms that are already using the alerts, and also firms that could really benefit from them. Scott and Lois, do you have any questions for Richard that you've?
Yes, actually, I do have about 2 questions for Richard. First off, thank you, Richard, for covering so many details. It was really enlightening for you to, just hearing you talk about so many aspects of conveyancing and also TwentyConvey as well. It was really, really insightful. So, obviously, you have years and years, in fact, decades of experience in conveyancing. So, I'd really like to know, in your view, with conveyancing, what's the biggest mindset shift that law firms need to make when moving from just one-time relationships with their clients to more long-term journeys?
Right, thank you, Louise. I hadn't thought of it in terms of decades, so that's quite humbling. But you're right. I've been around for a while. I think firms need to recognise that they need an internal structure that supports this sort of lifetime approach. I think traditionally there have been sort of relatively insurmountable barriers particularly in conveyancing, to say, well, how on earth do we know when people need to come back to us? There are only so many newsletters you can send out to your clients over 19 years. So I think that's why I'm quite passionate about the alerts, because I think it's an enabling bit of technology, and I think it encourages firms then to think a little bit more about, well, if this data is available to us, then how should we organise ourselves? And is there someone who should have responsibility for this within the organisation? Does it sit in marketing, or is it with different departments? And similarly, and that immediately leads you into the cross-selling piece. I mean, I haven't talked about that, but the synergies between conveyancing and wills and probate are obviously very strong. They're always acknowledged, but very often under exploited by firms. So I think there's a cross-selling dimension to this would be very important. But collect data as best you can. Use new data like the alerts to help you. But also put in place some operational measures that mean that you as a business can't help but direct your energies to this issue.
Great. Thank you, Richard. I think you've actually sort of answered my next question, because I was going to, I actually wanted to hear more from you regarding even just conveyancing in general, because it's always good to hear from someone that has worked with so many law firms. So, but you mentioned while you were talking earlier things like striking while the iron is hot, having a dedicated business team. You've seen that people with dedicated business teams or dedicated fee earners to follow up, they always seem to have success with conveyancing retention. I just wanted to get 1 or 2 more practical steps from you that you'd recommend to law firms that would make them active effectively before the opportunity of alerts pass them by.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that, I mean, that might be a sort of a culture sort of question in a way, because conveyancers traditionally have been very happy to sit back and wait to be fed, bluntly. Either by clients who find their own way back to them, or by people who introduce work to them in return for a fee. So I think from a cultural point of view, I think firms could and should increasingly take charge of their own pipelines and not be troubled by being proactive in looking for work, and when the option of work presents itself, in asking for it. So some of the sales training that we've been involved with new business teams demonstrates quite a passive, even in those sort of teams, quite a passive approach to to quoting. Well, we'll give you our quote, take it or leave it. Give us a call back if you want to proceed. And that sort of mindset is one which I think could very usefully be replaced by a more still professional, but by a much more proactive selling mentality, which I'd like to see firms adopt.
That's such a very good point, Richard, because we're always encouraging firms to be more proactive. And also what you mentioned earlier about the very obvious link between wills and probate and conveyancing is also a very, very good point. And we'll just still continue to recommend that law firms take advantage of that and being more proactive instead of reactive. Thank you very much, Richard. Scott, I'll hand over to you now. You have a couple of questions for Richard.
Thank you. Yes, I do, in fact, also have some questions. I'll be very quick because I appreciate we're coming up to the end of our time. I just wanted to double check. Obviously, all of our firms are sort of highly regulated, either usually by sort of SRA. I just wanted to double check there's no sort of regulatory repercussions in terms of this this form of contact with clients. I assume that as their previous clients, it's seen as a little bit easier in the eyes of the regulator. Just wanted to see if there's any regulatory things to be aware of with this.
Yeah, no, thank you, Scott. I mean, I think it's a question we do get asked, so thank you. Generally, from a GDPR point of view, everyone's fine because they're relying on legitimate interest as the basis for being back in touch. So the absence of an explicit permission from their former clients isn't necessary. And from an SRA point of view, I do feel for SRA regulated firms, because from a marketing point of view, you are constrained, especially over your CLC competitors, colleagues, because you're not allowed to make direct approaches, targeted direct approaches to the general public. So that precludes you from using our data to contact any and everyone who's just put their house on the market. But the great news is that the SRA do have a qualification in their practice rule, which excludes current or former clients. So making your former clients aware of your services again is entirely within the rules. So on both those points, we have big green ticks.
Brilliant, that's great to know. And also, just in terms of, I'm really interested in the sort of the mailing aspect of this, which is sort of understanding sort of an add-on to the alert. In what's the sort of timeline for that in terms of obviously alerts sort of sent through to the firm? So there's 5 people on that list, for instance, for a particular day. When would you expect them, those former clients, to receive that mailer? What's the sort of the usual lead time for that?
Yeah. Okay. And that's another good question. So the mailer is we organise the mailer to go out at the same time that we put the alert on the platform. So we send a message to our mail partner, who then produce they print to demand. So they print it and dispatch it the same day or the next day, and it goes second class post. So it'll arrive sort of 5 or 6 days later, typically. So what we found that works best then is as a reinforcement. So we'd hope and expect a client would be in touch by email and even by phone before the mailer arrives. Mm-hmm. So the mailer arrives as a sort of a further nudge to your former client typically after you've made that first engagement.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's really good to know.
I would imagine as well, there's some firms that maybe use that as a kind of voucher. So they're offering this, with the offer that they're discussing on the phone, they could say, you'll receive, I know they wouldn't call it a voucher, but that's how the
discount almost, yeah.
No, they do. I mean, they'll emphasize the loyalty discount or the returning client discount. Yeah. So it'll say, £100 off your legal fees, and they'll always we encourage them, but all firms do. They have a QR code, a website address, and a phone number. So there are multiple channels that they can, and again, the better firms track that so that they can see where the responses they're getting in from these cards. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. So like I say, I appreciate we're coming towards the end of our time, but feel free if you do have a question for Richard, please do drop a comment in the little comment box, and we can always come back to you if there's any questions we don't have time for today.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for coming along. Thank you so much, Richard, again for your time and all the information that you've given us today. I've noted down a few things, but we will be sending this recording out to everyone who's here today. If you'd like to also respond with what you'd like us to cover in next month's webinar, that would be brilliant, because that would give us a head start on planning with that. And also, if you'd like things like pricing or any resources from Richard from today, then let me know and I can get that over to you. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.